Hi everybody, welcome to Dr. Manny's YouTube Learnshops. Today we'll be looking at human personality as a component of behavioural sciences. I hope you enjoy. Now the learning outcomes for this lecture or presentation is that you'll be able to define personality at the end of the session, describe the four major personality theories, which are the psychodynamic theory, the humanistic theory, trait theory, and social cognitive theory, and be able to understand the factors that influence personality development. Take note during this, but it builds on as we go through other learning units, that these are things that you will be expected to regurgitate or demonstrate in your assignments and your oral presentations. So, what then is personality? When we look at the word person, it relates to a person. But personality originates from the Latin word of persona, which means mask. It describes characteristic patterns of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviours that make you you, make the person. And it makes you think, feel, and behave in specific ways. It makes you you. Have a look at some of these quotes. Many people would be scared if they saw in the mirror not their faces but their character. So what that basically means is, just because you see me physically, you don't really see me. You don't know me at all. And you don't know what I'm capable of. Just like I don't know what you're capable of. We often wear masks to conceal hurt and shame. While these masks can hide negative feelings, they can also keep the positive qualities hidden as well. Think about them. Personality is a mask you believe in. Basically, you can create your own personality. And if you believe that you're Superman, or hopeless, or a genius, you will believe it. Now there are numerous personality types. These are generic ones. And the personality types typically consist of the sanguine, the choleric, the melancholic, and the phlegmatic. Take note of these. Sanguine individuals are the extroverts. They're really sociable. They enjoy being part of the crowd. They're highly talkative. They're enthusiastic, they're active and social. Not me. The choleric. They're even more extroverted. They're very optimistic. They're dominant. They're independent, decisive, goal-orientated and ambitious. They're our natural leaders. Then you've got the melancholic individuals. They're introverts. They're introverted, unsociable, pessimistic. They're always analysing everything and are detail orientated, but are deep thinkers, and they have really deep feelings. They're often self-reliant, who are thoughtful individuals. They keep to themselves. They're often anxious, and they strive to be really good. They want to be perfectionists. Then you've got the phlegmatic. They're quiet. They're passive. They're calm. They're sympathetic to everybody. And typically, they hide their true emotions. These are the four main personality types, which we'll be interacting with as we go through this course. Again, another way of looking at it. You've got the four personality types. Look at now the sanguine. Red. Look at the image. Smiling. They're sociable, outgoing, talkative, responsive, easygoing, lively, carefree. They've got leadership qualities. And it indicates there that they're extroverts and emotionally stable. Then you've got the choleric. Yellow. Look at the expression. Touchy, restless, aggressive, excitable, changeable, impulsive, optimistic, active. They're extroverts as well, outgoing, but sometimes they can be emotionally unstable. Then you've got the phlegmatic. They're the introverts, the green. They're emotionally stable. They're passive, careful, thoughtful, peaceful, controlled, reliable, got a very even temperament, and they're calm. Then you've got the melancholic. Look at the expression. They're introverts as well, and sometimes they can be considered to be emotionally unstable, anxious, moody, inflexible, pessimistic, reserved, unsociable, and quiet. And these all come from Eysenck's personality and individual differences, which we'll be looking at when we look at his theory. So, think about which one or which ones are you? When I look at them from my perspective, I'm often a combination, and most people are. They change from one to the other. You can be an extrovert, be outgoing and sociable. However, you may at times be quiet and passive and calm. You may be an extrovert and totally optimistic and dominant, and you want to be independent and you are ambitious, but sometimes you may become pessimistic because it's interchangeable. Which one are you? Or which ones involve you? Now, the approaches to studying personality, there are many different theories, but typically it falls into 5 physiological questions that are branched from several approaches which we're going to be looking at. And the approaches are the psychodynamic, the humanistic, trait, and the social cognitive theories. However, there are other ones which I'm not going to touch on, but you can touch on them if you want to when you do your assignments, if it's appropriate or relevant, or your oral presentations. And they include the neo-Freudian, the behaviourist, the biological, and the cultural. And there are many other more. There are 5 questions that have a philosophical approach. And these are freedom versus determinism, which means how much, if any, of an individual's personality is absolutely under their conscious control. Because some theorists believe that it's subconscious. Then you've got hereditary versus environment, nature versus nurture, which we touched on previously. Do genetics or internal factors, or is it environmental or external factors or influences that play the larger role in determining personality? My perspective is environmental or your life experiences have a very major influence on your personality. It's your perspective. Then look at uniqueness versus universality. So, are individuals generally more alike, similar to each other, or are they really different, unique in our nature? Are individuals unique, very, very different, or are we basically the same? A lot of the academics basically say, look, biologically we're the same, but intellectually we're different. Active versus reactive. is human behavior passively shaped by the environmental factors, or do we play a very active role in forming our personality? Passive or active? Then you've got the final one, optimism versus pessimism. Are human beings central in changing their personalities? Can they learn and can they change through human interaction and interventions? If you're optimistic, will that have an effect on your personality? If you're pessimistic, will that have an effect on your personality? The first theory we'll look at is the psychodynamic theory approach. And this theory advanced a view of human personality that spoke about or indicated or implicated what was called the id, the ego and the superego. And these were the main components of the theory, which expressed individual differences in personality. And Freud, Sigmund Freud, who in 1905 proposed this, stated that personality developed according to 5 psychosexual stages. And that personality was primarily determined and primarily unconscious. You couldn't control it. Sigmund Freud was a doctor, a physician, and he lived between 1856 and 1939. And his theory was primarily, at that time, influenced by Victorian times. In the psychoanalysis, Freud's theory of personality said it was unconscious. The actions and thoughts were unconscious in their motives and their conflicts, positive and negative. And the techniques that were used in treating psychological disorders were to try and expose this. He was one of the first psychoanalysts to actually speak, interview, psychoanalyze his patients. He also thought about something called free association. And this was in psychoanalysis, exploring the unconscious. And he thought that when a person relaxes, they'll say whatever comes to their mind, no matter how minor, trivial, or how bad, embarrassing. As the unconscious, according to Freud, the unconscious held a reservoir, a lot, of unacceptable thoughts, wishes, feelings, and memories, and these were meant to be exposed. And if doing so, it would help the person. But the person was typically unaware of this, which he said personality is primarily unconscious. Now, in the psychosexual theory of development, there are 5 stages: oral, anal, phallic, latent, and genital. Oral refers to the mouth sucking or swallowing stage. Anal refers to expelling feces or not expelling feces, the anus. The phallic refers to the penis or the clitoris and indicates things like masturbation. The latent, there's little or no sexual motivation at that stage. And then the genital, the penis and vagina become important, and this is where sexual intercourse takes place. Now, across these 5 stages, the child is presented with certain conflicts, which means they have problems. And it's between their biological drives, which is called the id, the ID, and their social and moral conscience, which is the superego. And because their biological pleasure-seeking urges focus on different parts of the body, which we know are the erogenous zones, and it's during each stage a child is presented with a conflict, a problem, between the biological drives and the social expectations. And it's really important that they navigate through these successfully, otherwise there will be problems. They have to master each of these development stages to ultimately develop a fully mature, stable personality. Again, let's just reiterate. The psychosexual theory of development states that the oral stage typically occurs from birth to 18 months of age. And it's important to now move on to the next stage. So the principal task of this stage, in the oral stage, is to wean from being a baby. Then you move on to the anal stage, which is 18 months to 3 to 4 years of age, and this typically involves toilet training. This has to be successful in order to move on to the next stage. Now the phallic stage is from approximately 3 to 7 years of age, and this is where you determine your sexual identity. The latent stage, you're starting to evolve even further, and you're becoming pubescent, and learning goes on. And from puberty onwards, then this relates to the principal task is to participate in genital intercourse. Again, let's look at it again. The oral, the infant achieves gratification or happiness through oral activities, such as feeding, thumb sucking, babbling. They have to wean though. The anal stage, the child learns to respond to some of the demands of society, which is bowel and bladder control. I mean, you can't be peeing and pooping in public, in your classroom, in your preschool, watching TV. Then we move on to the phallic stage, and this is where the child realizes there are differences between males and females and becomes sexually aware. Then you've got latency, which is sort of a static stage, but it's basically quiet. Then you've got the genital, which is to do with becoming an adult, and they learn maturity. Now let's look at the theory in a little bit more detail. Now, this theory, Freud stated, was shaped from conflicts, which are unconscious. And they involve three components of intellectual or mind or to do with psychology: the id, the ego, and the superego. Id stands for instinctual trends. And this is the most primitive need. It's unconscious. It involves psychic energy that works to satisfy basic urges, needs, and desires. And Freud thought it was an important part of our personality because as newborns, it allows us to get our basic needs met. I mean, we're hungry. We've got a dirty nappy. We want to be loved. Freud believed that the id is based on our pleasure principle. In other words, the id wants whatever feels good at that time. And it doesn't care about anything else. There's no consideration for reality of the situation. So have a look at the diagram. The id, I want to do it now. I want it now. I desire it now. That's the id. Then you've got the superego. This is to do with morals and your conscience. It's to do with rules and regulations. And the superego is also unconscious. And it states, well, it's not right to do it now. It's not right to get it now. It's not right, full stop. And then in the center is the ego. And the ego is the balance. It's the balance between the aggressive, pleasure-seeking drives of the id with the moral control of the superego. It's in balance. The ego is what causes us to compromise. The id, I want it now. The superego, you can't have it now. It's inappropriate. The ego says, well look, maybe we can compromise and meet somewhere in the middle. That's the psychodynamic theory of Freud. So look at it in another way. You've got the id, the ego, the superego interface. Look at the diagram. Above the water indicates what you're aware of, your conscious mind. And this is what you know, your thoughts, things that you see, images, feelings, attitudes, beliefs and sensations. However, below the water indicates what you're not willing to experience in your unconscious mind, what you're unwilling to identify. And these could be feelings, thoughts, urges, memories of unacceptable or unpleasant situations that involve pain, anxious situations, conflicts and bad things that happen to you, and these all affect our behaviour. But we're unaware of it. This might be why you're pessimistic. This might be why you're negative. This might be why you don't like men. This might be why you don't like situations. So take for example, if your id walked past a stranger eating an ice cream, it would be most likely to say, take the ice cream now. The id doesn't care. It doesn't know that it's wrong to take something that belongs to somebody else. It would only care that it wanted the ice cream. You want an ice cream now. However, if your superego walked past the same stranger, it wouldn't take the ice cream because it would know that it was wrong. The id wants the ice cream now. Doesn't matter whether it's wrong or right. The superego says you can't have it and would not take it. However, if both your id and your superego were involved, and your id was strong enough to override the superego's concern, it would still take the ice cream. But afterward, it would probably feel guilt, you would feel guilt and shame over your actions. So if you walk past a stranger with an ice cream one more time, your ego would mediate the conflict between the id, I want the ice cream right now, and the superego, no, it's wrong. And the ego would probably help you negotiate and say, well, why don't you go and buy your own ice cream? That's how Freud promoted his psychodynamic theory. Then there are what are called ego defense mechanisms. And the ego defense mechanisms are to protect you from the conscious experience of having too much concern or being too anxious with emotions such as shame or guilt. You've got denial, displacement, projection, rationalization, reaction formation, regression, repression, and sublimation. Learn these. So how does it work? It works like this. Denial is refusing to accept real events because they're just too awful. They're too unpleasant. An example would be Kayla refuses to admit she has an alcohol problem, although she was unable to go a single day without drinking excessively. She's refusing to accept that she has a problem. Then you've got displacement. Look at the word. Transferring inappropriate urges or behaviours onto a more acceptable or less threatening target. So for example, during lunch at a restaurant, Mark's really angry at his older brother. But he doesn't express it. Instead, he gets really angry at the waiter or the person serving the food. displacement. Then you've got projection. And these are attributing unacceptable desires onto others, which means they're pushing it onto other people. So for example, Christopher often cheats on her boyfriend. Sorry, that should be Christine probably. Christine often cheats on her boyfriend because she suspects he's already cheating on her. So she does the bad thing because she thinks her boyfriend is doing exactly the same thing and justifies it that way. He's probably doing it as well. Probably. Then you've got rationalization. And this is justifying your behaviours by substituting acceptable reasons for less acceptable real reasons. So for example, you guys, Kim failed his history course because he didn't study. He didn't attend class. He didn't go online when he was supposed to. He didn't do the quizzes that was recommended by his lecturer. But he told his roommates, his colleagues, his classmates that he failed because Dr. Manny didn't like him. Rationalization, making sense of behaviours that are unjustified. Then you've got reaction formation. This is reducing anxiety by adopting beliefs contrary to your own beliefs. So you act and you believe something that you don't actually believe. So Nadia is angry with her co-worker, Beth, for always arriving late to work after a night of partying. But she's nice and agreeable to Beth and affirms that the partying is cool. So instead of being honest, she's being sort of dishonest to make herself feel better. Then you've got regression. And regression basically is returning to coping strategies for less mature stages of the development. Oral, anal, etc. So for example, regression, after failing to pass his doctoral examinations, Giorgio spends days in bed cuddling his favourite childhood teddy bear toy. Makes him feel better. Because when he was a kid, his teddy bear always made him feel good. Repression. Suppressing painful memories and thoughts. The example of repression. Lashia can't remember her grandfather's fatal heart attack, even though she was there. She doesn't want to remember. She doesn't want to remember her beautiful grandfather and how he died next to her. It's just too painful. Then you've got sublimation. Sublimation is redirecting unacceptable desires through socially acceptable channels. Jerome's desire for revenge on the drunk driver who killed his son is channeled into a community support group for people who've lost loved ones to drunk drivers and drivers who were driving while they were drunk. Sublimation. Yum, I want that whole cake now. Id. You can't have it, you're on a diet. Superego. Look, just have a small piece. Ego. I want the ice cream now. Id. It's not yours, you can't have it. Superego. Look, just get mummy to buy you your own. Ego. Oh my God. I want my usual car park now. How dare someone park there? Id. You can't have it. It's already taken. Superego. Look, just take the next one to it. There's lots of them. Ego. Okay, just to review for completeness, there are other approaches. I'm just going to go through them briefly here. Key points. Freud had many followers in that day, and they adapted and modified his psychoanalytic theories to create new theories, which are called neo-Freudian, new theories. And they included Adler, Horney, Jung, Erikson, which again, we'll be looking at Erikson in particular, but they agreed with Freud and the child experiences mattered. However, they expanded on his ideas by focusing on the importance of sociological and cultural influences, in addition to biological influences, which again Freud mandated. Alfred Adler, he was first to explore social theory, which we'll be looking at. Erikson proposed a psychosocial theory of development, which we'll be looking at. Carl Jung, his ideas were about a collective conscious and the persona, which we won't be looking at. And Horney's theories focused on unconscious anxiety, which also we won't be looking at. But if you want to look at them, you can. So let's review. There are three components to Freud's psychodynamic theory, and they were the id, the ego, and the superego. The id dealt with desire and wants. The superego dealt with morals, ethics, rules, your conscience. And the ego dealt with negotiation. Now let's look at the humanistic approach. And this approach argues that an individual's subjective or individual self-determination is the most important factor of behaviour. There's a holistic view that a person's personality is more than just the sum of the individual parts. You've got to look at a person holistically. And humans are aware of their motivations, and they do have the ability to set goals and adopt behaviours that will help them reach their goals. That's what you're going to do. And there is a belief that people strive to become self-actualized, look at the word, self-actualization, which is the best version of themselves. And it's often called the third force in psychology. Humanism is a reaction to both the pessimistic determination of psychoanalysis, because a lot of the academics believe that Freud's psychoanalytic theory or dynamic theory was pessimistic. However, it emphasizes on behaviors. So the behaviorists, or the humanists, view humans as passively reacting to the environments. And two of the leading humanist theorists or academics that made advancements were Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers, which we'll be looking at. Okay? So Maslow's humanism, his approach was to study personality by focusing on subjective experiences and free will. And he studied people who he considered to be healthy, creative and productive, and in our terms, really quite famous. He studied Albert Einstein. He studied Eleanor Roosevelt, Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln. Albert Einstein was a physicist, a genius. You would all know him. Eleanor Roosevelt, she was one of the President of the United States' wife. Thomas Jefferson was a President of the United States as well, as was Abraham Lincoln. And he found that similar characteristics were being open, creative, loving, spontaneous, compassionate, concerned about others, and accepting themselves. These were common characteristics that he identified in these people that he studied. Maslow came up with a hierarchy of needs. And in this theory, he proposed, this was in 1943, a theory of human motivation. And this means that in order for us to be motivated, or for motivation to occur, there has to be certain levels that have to be achieved. Similar to levels that were purported by Freud in his psychodynamic theory, but these are different levels. And these levels have to be satisfied within you, the individuals themselves. So the personality and hierarchy of needs, this is where human beings, he stated, had certain needs that were common. They had these in common. And they have to be met throughout human lifespan in order to achieve development. Maslow's hierarchy is most often presented as a pyramid, which I've presented for you there. And you've probably seen, maybe that you've seen. And there are fundamental physiological needs. At the bottom, physiological needs such as warmth, food, hunger, being satisfied, rest. And the most advanced self-actualization needs at the top. And this is realizing your personal potential, or trying to achieve or become the best that you can possibly be. And he purported that each level of the pyramid has to be filled before moving to the next. So you've got to go to the bottom one, the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one, in order to achieve each one. Maslow's theory is called the theory of human motivation. Ah, look, it's got variations as well, but primarily that's what it's referred to. And he developed a human hierarchy of needs that's conceptualized as the pyramid, as I said, to represent how people move from one level of needs to another. The first, physiological needs. And they have to be met before you can move on to safety needs. Once you've achieved safety needs, you move on to love and belonging. After that, self-esteem. After that, self-actualization. Learn these. You'll be asked about these many, many times over the course of your 4 years. Maslow's theory of human motivation is very important. They represent optimal psychological health and functioning according to his theory. Then you've got Carl Rogers' humanistic theory. And this emphasized the importance also of the self-actualizing tendency that shapes human personalities. But his framework of the therapy was known as the person-centered approach, or person-centered therapy. And this therapy holds, according to him, that the client is the best person, they're in the best position to understand and evaluate their own experiences. And the focus is on the person, not the problem. So his theory focuses on the person, not what their problem is. So the person-centered approach or care requires 3 conditions from you or from the therapist, which in his case was a sociologist or a psychologist. But nurses are a combination of many, many different roles. So the first condition was that there was an unconditional positive regard, accepting and caring, which basically means it verifies the client's worth, the patient's worth. You accept and support your patient regardless of their thoughts or behaviours. It's like unconditional love. And look, it's from a perspective as a sociologist, as a psychologist. But nurses are. They're a combination of all these things. So the unconditional positive regard is like unconditional love. You accept them regardless of everything. Then you've got empathy. Empathy implies accurate inference and understanding. You've got to understand and respect the client's or the patient's perspective. You've got to listen to them and respect the client's understanding of his or her experience. And you're not allowed to judge them. You're not being judgmental. Then you've got congruence, similarity, being genuine. So as the therapist, you've got to create an environment of trust. And you've got to be true. You've got to be honest. You've got to be authentic and allow their true personality to come through to the client. That's you. They've got to be able to realize that you really do trust them. It's a bit like being a mentor to you guys. A mentor isn't just someone that you go to with a problem. A mentor is usually someone that you will interact with for the whole of your life. You're not a preceptor. Preceptor is different. A mentor is someone, for example here, you, if I'm your mentor, you may call me in 30 years' time. Oh, Dr. Manny, remember me? I'm blah, blah, blah. I mean, I've got this problem and I haven't got anyone that I trust enough to talk to. That's congruence. So, person-centered care focuses on 3 conditions. Unconditional positive regard. You accept them no matter what. Unconditional love. Empathy, accurate inference and understanding. You're not being judgmental. And congruence, you've really got to be trusted. You've really got to be caring. That's probably the best word. You've really got to be caring. And as a nurse, that's your most important role. Care about what you do. And if you do, you won't make any medication errors. You won't identify the patient incorrectly. You won't cause any patient harm. The patient-centered care model is there, also represented as a triangle. And Rogers elevated the importance of unconditional positive regard, or what I call unconditional love. People, he believed, are raised in an environment of unconditional positive regard. There's no preconceived conditions of worth, and they have an opportunity to fully actualize. When people are raised in an environment of unconditional positive regard, where there's worth and there's love, they then match those conditions. They don't do exactly the same thing. Their ideal self, the best that they can be, is determined by others based on these conditions that we've just mentioned. And they're forced to develop outside their true actualizing tendency, which contributes to their incongruence and the greater gap between the real self and what they really want to be, their ideal self. Very, very similar to what Maslow purported, but a different approach. The focus is on person, patient, client-centered care. Now, he believed that there were 2 selves. The ideal self versus the real self. The ideal self is the person that we all want to be. The real self is the person that you actually are. And people experience congruence when their thoughts about their real self and their ideal self are similar. High congruence leads to a greater self sense of worth. And you are healthy. And you have a productive life. However, conversely, or in opposition, when there's inconsistency between our ideal and our actual selves, people experience incongruence, which leads to problems, which leads to maladjustment, which leads to issues in your life. Now, Rogers also believed in what was called the good life principle. Now remember, don't get stressed out about this, because these are theories that come from academics. And none of the academics believe exactly the same thing. That's what it is. A theory is actually what they are proposing. And there are many, many, many theories. So don't get stressed out about it. We're just covering some of the theories. Now, the good life principle indicates that motivation or behaviour is motivated by wanting to be the best you can be in your life. Self-actualization or self-actualizing tendencies. And fully functioning people, which basically means people that are stable, like you and I hopefully, have common traits. They're open, or they become more open to new experiences. They live each moment fully. They trust their own judgment and their behaviour. They determine and feel responsible. They're accountable for their behaviour. They have higher levels of creativity without needing the feeling to conform to what other people do. You're not a sheep. You're creative. You just don't do what everybody else does. Reliability and constructiveness, they always act positively. They're not negative. They have a rich, full life and will experience joy, pain, love, heartbreak, fear and courage more intensely, and not be terribly affected by it in a negative way. The good life principle. So let's review. What are Maslow, and you'll need this, what are Maslow's 5 levels of human motivation? At the bottom, you've got the physiological needs. Air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. That's the first one. If you achieve this level, and you have it, you move on to the next level, which is safety needs. This is your personal security. You've got a job, you've got resources, you're healthy, and you have some property. You feel safe and secure in your environment. If you have these two, you move on to the next one. Love and belonging. You've got friends. You've got family. You belong somewhere. There's a connection. If you have these 3, you can move on to the next one. Esteem. You have the respect of others. You respect yourself. Your position is important, and you recognize that. You're strong, you're free, you're independent. You believe in yourself. Then you get to the pinnacle, self-actualization. And you want to become more. You want to do your master's degree. You want to do your PhD. You may want to do something else in your career. You want to become the best that you can possibly be. In order to achieve that, you need the other 4. In that order, according to Maslow's theory of human motivation. Let's review. What are the 3 components of Rogers' patient-centered care model? Which at the centre is the person-centered approach. First, you've got congruence. Trust. authenticity, realness. Then you've got empathy, understanding as the therapist. And then you've got unconditional positive regard, no judgments. They're the three components required of a therapist, according to Rogers. Congruence, empathy, unconditional positive regard. Okay, now let's look at trait theory and their approach. Trait theorists believe personality can be conceptualized by a series of traits or characteristic ways of behaving. They presume that individuals differ in their traits due to genetic, biological differences. And there are 4 approaches which we'll be looking at. And the 4 approaches are Allport's theory, Eysenck's theory, Cattell's theory, and the Big 5 model, which is the most popular currently. Allport's trait theory approach was basically that he believed that personality is determined biologically at birth, and it's shaped by a person's environmental experiences. It emphasizes the uniqueness of the individual and the internal cognitive and motivational processes that influence our behavior. For example, those being intelligence, temperament, habits, skills, attitudes, and the actual traits. And he identified thousands of personality traits. He organized approximately 4,000, a few more, personality traits into a hierarchy of 3 levels, which he labeled cardinal, central, and secondary traits. Allport's trait theory, which he created in 1937, as I said, had cardinal traits, which were clear traits. And these people, their main passions, for example, Mother Teresa, her altruism, Albert Einstein's intelligence, Adolf Hitler, who was a leader in Germany, Nazis, Second World War, ruthlessness. Then you've got central traits, which are referred to as general traits. And we all have them. They're basically the building blocks of our behaviour. Kindness, sincerity, being calm, cheerful, honest, friendly, generous, anxious, and diligent. Then you've got secondary traits. And these are different traits, incongruent. And they only occur in certain situations. So for example, if I said to you guys right now, you're going to have an impromptu test, it's going to account for 10% of your grade, you haven't studied for it, normally students who would be confident may now become a little bit shy, anxious, irritable, apprehensive, scared, etc. Secondary traits. Allport's theory proposed cardinal traits, which everyone could see. We can all see that Mother Teresa was altruistic. We could all see that Albert Einstein was a genius. We could all, if we reviewed it, see Adolf Hitler was ruthless. He murdered more than 7 million Jews, 12 million people in total. Then you've got Eysenck's or Eysenck's trait theory approach. And he focused on 2 initial dimensions. 1947. Extroversion versus introversion, which we sort of looked at previously with personality. Extroverts, he said, are commonly known as being loud and outgoing. Introverts are often thought as quiet and reserved. And then you've got emotional stability versus emotional instability, which he called neuroticism. And Eysenck based his theory on the responses. Where did he get this idea from? From hospitalized military servicemen. He observed them. And he proposed a theory based on biological factors, arguing that individuals inherit a type of nervous system that affects their ability to learn and adapt to an environment. And it was during the 1940s when Eysenck was working in a psychiatric hospital in London. It was his responsibility to make an initial assessment of each patient before their mental disorder was diagnosed by a psychiatrist. And it was through this position that he got data and he compiled a battery of questions about behaviour, which later he applied to 700 soldiers who were being treated for neurological disorders. And this is how he came up with his theory. Emotional stability versus emotional instability. We looked at this diagram sort of before, but we'll look at it again. This is Eysenck's personality inventory, 1947. And he came up with this idea of these 4 personality traits: sanguine, choleric, phlegmatic, melancholic, introverted, extroverted personality, unstable and stable emotions. However, in 1976, he added a 3rd trait, which he called psychoticism versus normality. And this trait basically said, well, you're a cruel person, or you're not a cruel person. You lack empathy, or you don't lack empathy. You're a loner, or you're not a loner. You're aggressive, passive, you're troublesome, you're not troublesome. This was referred to as the Penn Big Three model. And we sort of looked at it before. This 3rd dimension, it's been related to high levels of testosterone. The higher the testosterone level, biological, the higher the level of psychoticism. With low levels, you're more normal. You're more balanced in your behaviour. If you've got high levels of testosterone, here you become unstable. Using factor analysis in his theory, Hans Eysenck identified 3 personality factors: psychoticism, extroversion, and neuroticism, which is the Penn Big Three model. Psychoticism, you're psychotic, crazy. You're extroverted, extroversion, or you're neurotic. Each of Eysenck's factors is bipolar. It has a bipolar dimension, which means here that it's got an opposite. So have a look at the diagram. You've got extroversion related to introversion. You've got neuroticism, or being neurotic, related to emotional stability. And then you've got normality related to psychoticism. And this is related to, he thought, or he proposed, testosterone. Now let's look at Cattell's, Dr. Raymond Cattell. Look, they're all doctors. You know, they don't call themselves doctors. They're not medical doctors. They're either psychologists or sociologists, PhD. So Dr. Raymond Cattell, he identified 2 types of traits: surface traits and source traits. Surface traits, well, they're on the surface. They're very obvious to everybody. You can identify them. I mean, you look at Albert Einstein and, he's a really clever guy. He's a genius. Or Mother Teresa, oh gee, she's really altruistic. She spent her whole life looking after the poor, right up until the day she died. Adolf Hitler, oh my God, what a cruel bugger. I mean, he's really, he's sadistic. I mean, look at obvious. Surface traits are very, very obvious. Source traits are less visible. I mean, these are basic factors of an individual personality. Can you identify by looking at them whether someone's unselfish or selfish? Whether they're generous or not generous? Whether they share or don't share? Whether they care or don't care? Whether they're thoughtful or not thoughtful? They're less visible. These are surface traits. And it was Cattell, he reduced Allport's list of more than 4,500 traits down to 35. And then he reduced them even further to 16 traits. A different theory. Cattell's approach basically was that personality could be understood by looking at 2 or 3 dimensions of behaviour. And he disagreed with other academics like Eysenck. Instead, he argued that it was necessary to look at a much larger number of traits than the minimal ones that Eysenck recommended. And he said you needed to do this to get a complete picture of someone's personality. So he reduced, as I said, Allport's list of 4,500 down to 35 and then down to 16. And he based these 16 factors, and that's how he developed a personality tool. And he called it the 16 personality factors, or 16 PF. And instead of a trait being present or absent, each dimension scored over a continuum from high to low. For example, if your level of warmth was described here, how warm, caring, nice are you to others? If you score low on this index, you tend to be more distant and cold. If you score high on this index, it signifies that you are supportive and comforting, etc., etc. It's a quantitative tool, which again you'll learn about as you do your research. Now, with Cattell's factor analysis, Cattell's 16PF, the relationships between the factors, this was a statistical process known as factor analysis. And this is how he generated 16 dimensions of human personality traits. And it was a multivariate approach. The key concept basically was that multiple observed variables have got similar patterns of responses. Looks complicated. But if you look at it, basically it looks at things like extroversion, self-control, anxiety, whether you're independent, whether you're receptive. These are actually the 16 personality factors, which he labelled abstractiveness, which means you're imaginative in comparison to being practical. Apprehension, confident versus being worried. Dominant, forceful, submissive. Emotional stability, are you emotional or are you calm? Liveliness, are you spontaneous or not spontaneous? Open to change, flexible, inflexible. Perfectionism, controlled or undisciplined. Privateness, are you discreet or are you an open person? Reasoning, are you abstract, different ideas, not usual, or are you very fixed in the way you think? Rule consciousness, do you conform or you're unconforming? Reliance, self-reliant, independent, or are you dependent? Sensitivity, are you tough? Are you tender-hearted? Social boldness, are you uninhibited or are you inhibited and shy? Tension, impatient, patient. Vigilant, suspicious, trusting, warmth, outgoing, etc. Cattell's personality factors. And he collected data from a wide range of people, and the data was basically from school records, absence from work. The questionnaire was designed on a person's individuality. And the whole point of it was to tap into their personality construct. But again, it's just one theory. Okay, let's review. Allport's trait theory, you've got three. Cardinal, central, secondary. The image basically is showing you here someone who is confident usually. She goes to speak on a podium, public speaker, and suddenly she's nervous, shy, as we all become. These are secondary traits. But Allport proposed cardinal, clear, unique traits, central, traits that we all have, secondary, sometimes they're opposed. Then you've got Eysenck's trait theory, extroversion versus introversion, emotional stability versus neuroticism, psychoticism versus normality. Cattell's trait theory, you've got surface traits. They're obvious. They're easily identified by people. Altruism, or your self-interest, the opposite. Surface traits, basic factors of an individual's personality: generous, ungenerous, caring, unfeeling. He created 16 personality factors. Look at the image. Florence Nightingale, founder of nursing, founder of modern day nursing, altruistic, devoted her life to nursing, the care of the sick. Okay, now let's review the most widely accepted trait model at this present point in time. And it's called the Big Five Factor Model. And it was inspired by Dr. Raymond Cattell, which we discussed, with his 16 personality factors. And it uses the acronym OCEAN. And it's often called the 5 factors. And it deals with openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. But a lot of a lot of academics criticize the 5 factor model because it's limited in scope, they believe, and not theory driven. They also point out to its limitations in its use of the factor analysis, which is Cattell's conception, because a lot of academics don't agree with a lot of the different theories. But have a look, there's a continuum. O, C, E, A, N. OCEAN is the acronym, remember that. Openness to being closed. Consciousness to being disorganized. Extroversion, introversion. Agreeableness, disagreeable. Neuroticism, emotional stability. They all determine one's personality. Okay. The Big Five Factor Model. There's the continuum. O, openness. You have imagination, feelings, actions, ideas. On the low score, you're practical, conventional, prefer routine. The high score, you're curious. You've got a lot of independent ideas. C, consciousness, refers to competence, self-discipline, thoughtfulness, goal-driven. On the continuum, you're impulsive, careless, disorganized. Otherwise, you're hard-working, dependable, and organized. Extroversion. On one continuum, the low score, quiet, reserved, withdrawn. High score, outgoing, warm, you're adventurous. A, agreeableness, you're cooperative, trustworthy, good-natured. On one continuum, critical, uncooperative, suspicious. Otherwise, on the other continuum, you're helpful, trusting, and empathetic. N, the neuroticism. There's a tendency towards unstable emotions. However, on the continuum, you can be calm, even-tempered, secure, or at the other end, anxious, unhappy, and prone to negative emotions. And the 5 factors can be assessed according to a Likert scale, which is something that you'll learn about if you don't know in the future when you do your research, where a person's asked to read a number of descriptions or adjectives. You probably had to do it yourself here in relation to Dr. Manny's course. How did you find it? Was it good or was it bad? Was it good? You strongly disagree. You disagree, you agree, strongly agree. You don't want to give an answer. The Likert scale. Okay, let's begin. O, openness to experience. This is about a person's intellect or imagination, willing to try new things. The common traits are curiosity, imagination, insightfulness, originality, cleverness, creativity, intellect. Then you've got C, conscientiousness. This is people with leadership qualities. Conscientious people are goal-directed. Common traits, they're ambitious, self-disciplined, reliable, work hard, they plan, they persevere. Then you've got E, extroversion. This is to act rather than wait. Extroverts draw energy by interacting with others. Common traits include being sociable, confident, assertive, energetic, fun-loving, affectionate. Agreeableness. These are people who are liked, respected, and sensitive to the needs of others. Common traits include altruism and being unselfish, trustworthy, tactful, helpful, kind, considerate. Then you've got neuroticism. This is a tendency to be self-conscious and unsure of yourself. Common traits include being pessimistic, jealous, anxious, insecure, moody, irritable, clumsy, oversensitive. With the Big Five factor model, it's also important to note that the Big Five traits are relatively stable over our lifespan. But there's a tendency for some of the traits within ourselves to increase and decrease. For example, researchers found that conscientiousness increases through young adulthood to middle age. But as we become better to manage our own personal relationships and careers, it excels. Agreeableness also increases with age. It peaks about 50 to 70 years of age. Neuroticism, however, and extroversion seems to decline with our age. Most people lie somewhere in between the two polar ends. No one is typically at the low end of score all the time, or the high end score. It fluctuates. But typically, most people are between the two polar ends of each dimension. Let's review the Big Five model. Openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Now let's review social cognitive theory and the approach. And this is a learning theory that was developed by a Stanford psychology professor, Dr. Albert Bandura, and he details the processes of observational learning, role modeling, and the influence of self-efficacy or believing in yourself on the production of behaviour. And it's a framework for understanding how people are shaped by what they do and by their environment. And all of you will be taking one of these theories and applying it into your presentations, written and oral. And you can add to any of it as you choose to. Now, social learning theory basically states that people learn from one another by observation, imitation, modelling, within the context of their social interactions experience and outside media influences. In 1977, Bandura introduced social learning theory, which he further refined in his ideas after observational learning and modelling. He believed, as I just indicated, people learn from one another by observation, imitation, modelling. He thought that when people observe a model performing a behaviour and the consequences of that behaviour, they remember the sequence of events and they use the information to guide subsequent behaviours. So what they're saying is they see and then they do. He also stated that observing a model can also prompt a person to engage in the behaviour they already learned by replication. So they can do it. So for example, if you get taught how to take a blood pressure and you understand it, you can replicate that. You can do a blood pressure as well. He also believed that individuals' beliefs in their own abilities, self-efficacy, influences whether or not they will reproduce an observed behaviour in order to maximise rewards. So what they're basically saying as well is you've got to believe in yourself to do the procedure or do the action. If you don't believe in it, then there probably won't be a positive outcome. And if there's not going to be a positive outcome, you're not going to do it. And he also stated that depending on whether people are rewarded or punished for their behaviour, the outcome of the behaviour, the observer may choose to replicate the behaviour modelled. So if someone gives you praise, your clinical instructor, your lecturer, your mother, your father, you may want to do that procedure. And the social learning theory has what is called the triadic reciprocal causation model, which means behaviour is affected by environmental factors, which is affected by personal factors. Behaviour affects personal factors. Behaviour affects environmental factors. This is the triangle, another triangle, for social learning theory. In 1986, Bandura renamed his theory the social cognitive theory because he put greater emphasis on intellectual thinking, cognitive thinking components of observational learning, the way behaviour, cognition and the environment interact to shape people, and that was, as I indicated, the triadic reciprocal causation model. And he stated that human behaviour is determined by cognitive factors, knowledge, expectations, attitudes, which he also called personal factors, they belong to you. Behavioural factors such as skills, practice, self-efficiency. Environmental factors which dealt with social norms, community access and the influence of others. Now, social cognitive theory, which again, I don't really want to go over it all again, but I'm just going to emphasize the importance of observational learning, looking, watching, modeling, copying, self-efficacy, belief in yourself, to do whatever it is that you want to do. It emphasized how cognitive, behavioral, personal and environmental factors interact to determine your motivation and your behavior. And he basically caused this theory to occur because of his dissatisfaction with the principles related to other theories, related to psychoanalysis and humanism or behaviorism, from the previous theories that we mentioned. Now, with observational learning, there are essentially 4 steps that have to be taken into consideration. The behaviour has to be observed, which focuses with attention. You've got to be focusing on the behaviour. You've got to be paying attention. Then, you've got to retain the information. retention. You've got to retain it in your memory. Then you've got to be able to reproduce it. You've got to be able to copy the behaviour. And then you've got to be motivated. You've got to have a reason why you're going to do this behaviour. And that's, for example, let's say a reward, or passing your clinical assessments, or being re-employed. Attention, retention, reproduction, motivation. So, for example, an intramuscular injection. 1. Use an alcoholic swab to clean the skin where you'll give the injection. 2. Hold the muscle firmly and insert the needle into the muscle at a 90-degree angle. 3. After you insert the needle completely, release your grasp on the muscle. 4. Gently pull back on the plunger to see if there's any blood if you've entered a vein or an artery. 5. No blood, inject all the solution gently. 6. Withdraw the needle and syringe and press with a swab, not really an alcohol swab, but a swab on the spot where the injection was given. You should be able to reproduce that. After you've done that, the skill assessment is passed. That's your reward. Quotes, which I think are important. We as parents are our children's first and best role models. And this is particularly true when it comes to their health. We can't lie around on the couch eating French fries, candy bars, and expect our kids to eat carrots and run around the block. Role modelling. Children are great imitators, so give them something to imitate. Role modelling. Children learn from what you are than what you teach. It's true. People don't do what you say, they do what they see. If you tell them not to smoke and you're smoking, they're probably going to smoke, if they respect you as a role model. Right, let's move on. In a famous and influential experiment known as the Bobo doll experiment, Albert Bandura and his colleagues demonstrated one way that children learn aggression. According to Bandura's social learning theory, learning occurs through observations and interactions with other people, which is just what I said. And this experiment in 1961 identified how children alter behaviour by observing others. Observational. The Bobo doll experiment in 1961 is famous. I mean, it's a famous experiment, and it demonstrated one way that children learn to be aggressive. And according to Bandura and his social learning theory, learning occurs through observations and interactions with other people, which I've previously stated. The findings of the study were basically that children who observed the aggressive model were more aggressive than those in the non-aggressive or control groups. The girls in the aggressive model showed more physical aggression if the model was male, but more verbal aggression if the model was female. The boys were more likely to imitate same-sex models than girls. So boys imitated the males. Boys were more physically aggressive than the girls, but there was minimal difference in the verbal aggression between the boys and the girls. The conclusions were, children learn social behaviour by observation and learning by watching the behaviour of another person. And this Bobo doll experiment study has got important implications for the effects of media violence on children. because it's all evolved since then. Again, children learn social behaviour by observing and learning by watching the behaviour of another person. I mean, if they watch their parents hurt each other, be cruel to each other, they learn from that. If they watch them be kind to each other, loving to each other, they learn from that. Modelling. Modelling, this is a behaviour that has to be demonstrated by a role model like a parent, a friend, a celebrity, a colleague, someone you respect. The observer has to identify with the role model, and normally because they're similar in appearance, gender, and they have similar interests. That's how they do it. Look at father and son. Boy wants to be like his dad. Every father, not a bad quote, every father or mother should remember that one day his son or daughter will follow his or her example instead of his or her advice. Self-efficacy. This is an important concept. This is a person's belief in their inborn, inherent ability to achieve goals. A belief in yourself. It motivates when people see others like them succeed, they also believe that they can be capable of succeeding. It's true. I mean, if you can see other people in your clinical area, or your superiors, or your seniors, have achieved their nursing degree, their master's degree, their PhD, why can't you? Why can't you? Can be the difference. Whether or not an individual considers making a positive change in their life. If you've seen that other people can stop smoking, can lose weight, can become a professor, why not you? Research has shown that enhancing self-efficacy beliefs is more likely to result in improvement in health habits than the use of fear-based communication. I mean, what's the point of putting terrible pictures on a packet of cigarettes showing lung cancer, showing the effects of stroke, showing bad things, scaring people? It doesn't work. It's more beneficial to tell people, to educate people, to show people the benefits of improving your health. Then it's up to them. Look at this. This is you, academic self-efficacy. This is you at the bottom. I want to do it. Now, don't go back to I can't do it. You want to go up to I'll try to do it, and how do I do it? And then you get to I can do it, and I will do it, and then you succeed. It's like the little train chugging up the hill. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, getting higher up the hill. I know I can, I know I can, I know I can. They get to the top of the hill. I did it. You can do it too. Academic self-efficacy, or any self-efficacy, you are what you believe yourself to be. If you think you're useless, you'll be useless. If you think you're awesome, you will be awesome. If you just think you're okay, that's okay too. It's not important what other people believe about you. It's only important what you believe about yourself. I could tell you lots of stories from my life. Believe in yourself and you'll succeed. Remember, with any of these theories, it's important to keep in mind that the culture in which we live is one of the most important environmental factors that shapes you. Western ideas about personality are not necessarily applicable in this culture. There's evidence and strength of personality traits that varies across cultures. We're all different. So in summary, what are the factors that shape your personality? Nurture or nature? Or both? Again, for you, think about. Maybe I'll include this as a discussion, but you've already told me, I think, certain things about yourself. List 5 characteristics that make you you. What's special about you? And I hope you never ever say nothing. What or who has shaped you? For each of the characteristics, indicate what's been most important about shaping you. Who? Who's been responsible for making you? Your parents, your peers? Is it genetic? Is it something else? Think about it. Nature or genetics? Genes and hereditary factors, physical appearance, personality traits. What factors does nature influence? Is it the brain, your intellect? Is it your physical stature, your size? Is it your temperament, your character? Can we change these? What factors does nature influence? Nurture. How we were raised. This is to do with social relationships, family, home, school, work, cultural influences, language, religious factors. Nurture, the environment, I think is really very, very important. Good environment, bad environment. Family influences, remember, a child's first social learning occurs at home. We'll be looking at this again. And their earliest experiences with family, particularly their mother, are critical. The mother is the most important to the infant and the child. It fulfills the primary needs of food, Maslow's hierarchy. There's an alleviation for pain, pleasure, comfort, warmth, physiological needs. The infant soon learns to search and approach their mother whenever they're hungry, in pain, uncomfortable with a wet nappy. What factors does nurture influence? I'll put them all there. The general, parents, and peers. I think this is a great quote, because a lot of people forget where they came from. I think anybody, not just children, is a product of a great environment. If you put them in a better environment from a terrible, sad, bad situation, 9 times out of 10, they'll go in the right direction. They'll succeed. Be very careful of the people you surround yourself with. This is good advice for all of you. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. If you're with negative people, avoid them. Try and be with positive people. Your children, you, will become what you are. So be what you want them to be. Be what you want to be. And the 5 lessons in life from Dr. Seuss, not bad. Today you are you. That is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you. Why fit in when you were born to stand out? Stand out. You have the brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction that you choose. Be who you are and say what you feel. because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. Today I shall behave as if this day will be remembered. Okay, thanks everybody. If this session was of any value, useful, check out some of the other Dr. Manny Learnshops on YouTube. Bye for now.